Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I am Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 6. This one was called The Price. And we ended the last episode with a millisecond of a flashback, which led to an episode full of flashback, Tom. And this was an interesting episode. We have Pedro Pascal back in full, and we go through several time jumps. Really, the growth of a person from 14 to 19 and all of those special moments that happen during those magical ages. Tom, you've always referred to the 14 to 19 years as your magical ages. Did this episode really touch you in the sternum or heart or wherever they put the cavity that used to hold your heart?
I love this episode. I thought it was fantastic. I think this is filling in a lot of the gaps of, I think, some of the emotional weight that happened earlier. And like we talked about, I think some of this maybe could have paid off a little bit better in terms of the scenes we saw previous if we would have gotten this flashback a little bit sooner. But I'd almost argue they're kind of doing in reverse. They're making this episode a little bit more powerful with what we have known and what we've seen in the past, like with the songs that are sung, with the kind of promises broken or not kept. And I love the way they structured it with like the flashback sequences of doing like each of her birthdays. And essentially what we're seeing is like some of the happiest and worst moments of Ellie and Joel's relationship. So I loved it. And all that's to say too, episode is just ripe with content from the game of like really big scenes, whether it's the museum piece or the porch conversation. Like these are all really, really big emotional moments in the game. And I thought they did it brilliantly. But what did you think, man?
Sure.
Non-gamer audience, I know you've been a little hesitant. This is a much more emotional episode. How did it hit you?
No, here's what I've chosen to do, Tom. I'm taking the higher road. So I'm not going to nitpick. I'm not going to be negative. I'm just going to talk about the things I enjoyed, and then I'm going to really dig in on the things that I absolutely hated.
Okay.
No, it was fine. I guess I enjoyed it. There's certain things that they did in this episode, and I mean, we'll go through it sequentially, but like the first scene to kind of the tie-in to the last scene of the episode, I thought was like fun, good story writing in terms of tying Joel's childhood with how he's trying to raise Ellie. I have just some moments with Ellie that we'll talk about that I just have questions about head injuries and what's going on. How one eats cake, I don't know. But we'll get into it. I enjoyed parts of it. I'm really doing my best not to. I think I have a problem with once I'm out on something, I can just like destroy it. And so what I've tried to be a little bit more mature and find the stuff I enjoy in this show, because there's a lot of stuff that's well done as opposed to, just joining my Reddit friends and trying to take it down piece by piece. So, all in all, Tom, parts I enjoyed, parts I had questions on, and parts I just flat out ignored. But
well, let me know which parts you didn't like. Yeah, because I'd like to kind of talk through that. Like, I know there's still some like Ellie being Ellie, and we kind of jumped a little bit further back here, like 5 years ago. So she's still quite a bit younger, so more like smart alecky. So yeah, let's talk through it. I'd be interested to know your thoughts throughout.
That's fine. I just wanted to point out that Joey Pants shows up in this episode.
Oh, Joey Pants!
It was great to see him, albeit for a short time. Anyways, we start with Joel and Tommy as kids. We essentially, it's Joel covering for Tommy, so we get the backstory of how Joel has always been a good older brother. I don't know that I knew this. This could have been passed in the game or in the show in season 1, but their dad apparently was a cop. And they have this is a family meeting, but there's a lot less yelling than family meetings should have, Tom. No one gets hit, which is also a little bit strange for a family meeting, although they talk about it. And then they share a beer, which has never happened at any family meeting I've ever been invited to or attended.
Now, was that a beer or was it a nice cold squelch?
It was not a squelch, Tom. It was definitely a beer. If it would have been a squelch, I would have been interested, because this would have been like a throwback squelch, back before they changed the label and they took all the cocaine out of it. Because, as everyone knows, original squelch had cocaine in it.
Loads of cocaine. Then they switched to meth.
Yeah,
Did you, speaking of switching to meth, did you notice this actor that played the dad? His name was Tony Dalton. And I say meth because he was prominent in the Better Call Saul, kind of the prequel-ish series to Breaking Bad. I know he's been like in the Marvel franchise, but he's just a fantastic actor. And I think he does such a great job in this scene of just kind of being that kind of deadbeat, abusive dad in like, I guess, the times that he was raised and trying to be a little bit better. It was an interesting tale.
No, I did not. I was too busy thinking about this pot deal that went wrong and thinking about how it was done by the hot cops. And that when they showed up, they were like, drug delivery. And Job was like, look how hot they are, Michael. And then one of them's like, wait, you want us to strip? Anyways.
Drink as an Arrested Development reference.
There you go. Drink a squelch. All of this to come down to the poignant moment of the dad being like, listen, yes, I hit you, but I don't hit you as hard as my dad hit me. So I'm just trying to do better. And I wrote that down, and this has not been part of my parenting, like modem operandus or however you say that. But I'm now going to think about this more, about how when my parents hit me, they had this thing called a Jacari paddle that they hid in the linen closet. How I am going to start hitting my kids, but just less than my parents hit them, and therefore breaking the cycle. Because that's what I learned from this episode, Tom.
Yeah, like your dad came at you at like with an 8. You're going to come out with your kids with like maybe a 6.
7.
In terms of power.
7.
Okay, 7. Just one notch down.
Yeah. Come on. I don't want them to get spoiled, you know. They need to learn pain, you know.
We shouldn't laugh about this, but we're obviously making light of it. But I like the idea of it being like the pain, the trauma, like the violence being kind of passed down. And obviously Joel is not Ellie's father, but certainly a father figure and like trying to do better. Like you kind of mentioned, we get a little bit at the end where he's going to bring this back to Ellie. Did you notice too that as he, like, as the dad puts his hand on his shoulder, you see the watch, and it was like the unbroken watch that Sarah had kind of like fixed for him back in the first episode of the series?
I did not notice that. So he's passed down his watch and he's passed down his parenting techniques. And all of that is supposed to push us to some sort of deeper thought, but Tom is a shallow person. I just can't get by it. So, but no, I do want to point out, I appreciated this opener, and then I appreciated the tie-in conversation at the end, and I thought that was well done from the writing.
Yeah, and this is all new stuff from the game. Like it kind of broadens the backstory of Joel, showing him always being a protector, not only to Ellie but to Tommy when they were younger. It was great. I liked it. Good
so
addition.
This was part of the game or was not part of the game?
Was not. Sorry.
Okay. There's no like hit triangle to drink the beer, and then you drink the beer, and your dad's like, "This was all a trick. You're underage. I'm a cop. You're arrested. You're going away for a long time, buddy." There's none of that in the game.
There was
bad.
not. No.
All right. Well, I wrote 2 months in Jackson, so 2 months after the scene of Joel being a child, he's grown immensely, and he's now in Jackson.
When they arrive at Jackson, because he talks to Seth, and he's like, hey, I've been here for 2 months.
All the timeline stuff can be, it's as confusing as Lost or the Marvel Universe. Anyways, so we have Seth, who's back doing well. I don't know that I realized he was a barkeep, but it tracks based on his character. And we see Legos. My subtitles were like toys crinkling or something. And I was like, whoever runs the subtitles, surely you know what Legos are. Those are definitely Legos.
I mean, I'm assuming this is like the new currency of the wasteland that is Last of Us, because Legos are the best.
I mean, think about it. You could build yourself armor out of Legos, and the infected are not getting to you. You could just be, like a character in Minecraft walking around completely protected from those dumb zombies. Anyways, we find out that Seth was once a cop. We get a little bit more humanity out of Seth, and that Pedro is ordering, or Joel, as we like to call him in the show, is ordering something vanilla, which turns out to be a birthday cake. And man, I'll hold my thoughts. I've got so many questions about this cake. So cake is coming, but also his gift is this deeply handcrafted guitar.
Yeah.
which I loved when he went into the Dremel usage. That was great.
I mean, you gotta love a good like woodworking montage. Like we saw it in the house where he had like what did he have, like an owl and a duck? Like he's been doing some woodworking. So to like see him painstakingly like Dremel down that, not only the guitar head or whatever, but the kind of bone piece kind of on the end. Like it was all brilliant and fantastic.
Yes, it was. This all leads to Ellie showing up, I guess, high off painkillers with Tommy because she burned herself while cooking. And this decision was because she's trying to disguise the bite mark because she's too young for a tattoo at this point. So she has tried to burn because she's just had to wear long sleeves all the time. And everyone hates long sleeves in Jackson, Wyoming, right?
Yeah, I mean, because we had speculated as to how she like got the scar on her arm. I think in the game it was like a chemical burn. Here they're saying she just kind of burnt it, I guess, with a pot and pan. I'm not sure what. But yeah, it's her just kind of like wanting to be able to start the next chapter, feel like a normal person, being able to wear longer sleeve or short sleeves as opposed to always wearing long sleeves, even though it's probably pretty cold constantly in Jackson. If you did notice too, they do a quick pan to like her desk and you can see an Aha cassette. Aha being the band that sung Take On Me. So that was kind of fun.
Sure. Now, why doesn't she just take up basketball and wear one of those like Under Armour sleeves things? And she's just constantly talking about hooping and putting up the alley-oops and stuff. Don't you think
Allen
that's
Iverson
better
style?
than...
She could have.
Yeah, Allen Iverson style. That's exactly the basketball player that I was thinking of, Tom. Mr. Iverson, as I like to call him. The big I.
Practice?
Practice? I thought he's not playoffs. He's practice. That's right. Okay, the cake is delivered, and while Joel's back's turned, I thought Ellie became an infected, because when he turns back around, she has demolished this cake, and God bless her, she has the silliest look on her face, almost demonic, and she does it a couple of times in this episode, and I was like, oh, I'm going to forgive her because she's still on painkillers. Here's what's confusing. We did a time jump already, so Ellie was 14, right? And then she's 19, and she's cage fighting people. In this episode, we're backtracking. Once again, not trying to nitpick, but I don't think we've done a very good job of, like, she's kind of act the same as a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old. She's kind of brash. She's rude. So in this episode, it feels like we're like, oh, she's back to being 15, so she does kid things. It's kind of like, well, she always does kid things in every episode. And so I found this a little bit, like, I was trying to get my bearings as to, like, okay, they're trying to show us she's still a kid, and that's why she's taken half of this cake. And the other part of me is like, I wonder if Joel would have used some of his father's parenting techniques. Maybe she'd know not to destroy that cake that he paid so dearly for with Legos. Do you get what I'm picking up, Tom?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point. I think they definitely went a little bit heavy-handed by letting you know that this is a flashback and that she is just turning 15. I get what your point is about like her still being kind of like a kid at 19 and being a jerk or whatever to people, but I feel like there's a difference though. Like there's a difference between her being kind of like naive, kind of like more kind of fun-loving, I guess, with Joel, than it is her being kind of like just mean-spirited towards everybody around her. And I think we kind of find out throughout this episode why she kind of becomes a little bit jaded and mean-spirited to people, because this lie that Joel told her as she, entered Jackson is just lingering and eating away at her for years and years.
Sure, that's fair. Tom, as a guy that does Legos, you know that bag of Legos costs conservatively $400. And so to pay a bag of Legos for a cake that looks, albeit poorly spelled, pretty nice, and then turn around and have your kid have demolished half of it. Didn't you feel your blood boil just a little bit?
Listen, Joel didn't need the calories. This whole cake was for her, so he's not having any.
All right, that's fair. Joel hasn't touched a carb since 2008. I get what you're picking up. That's fine. This all leads to him handing her the guitar, which is a lovely moment. She accentuates the lovely moment by demanding a song. It felt a little bit like Make Me a Bicycle Clown, play me a song. And so we get a lovely, once again, emotional guitar playing scene that this show keeps giving us. And Tom, I love every one of them. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. Yeah, so this is the Future Days song by Pearl Jam, which is the same song I believe they did do in the games. And he starts the lyrics, and the lyrics are obviously very poignant and why I think they're integrated into both the show and the game, starting, if I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. And we saw Ellie try to start singing this when she was kind of in the theater and couldn't get past that first lyric, because I think the idea is both of these characters have given in to kind of their dark side and their demons, and certainly we saw that with Ellie in the last episode of kind of taking out Nora. Like, they're losing themselves, they're losing their soul because they don't have this person in their life. So I get it might have come off maybe a little bit cheesy to kind of sound, but I can tell you, as somebody who's played the game and kind of knows the emotion that is the kind of the guitar and the way they kind of put these flashbacks and the just overarching story, I found this powerful, and I loved Pedro's performance here, kind of like just gruff and singing through all this, even though he doesn't necessarily want to with Ellie.
Sure. I think you're making great points, and I thought it was well acted. I understand what they're doing. We talked about this, I think, in the last pod, about how these guitar scenes, the payoff is in this episode's flashbacks. And so it's like retroactively, those moments mean more to us now. Like, as show watchers, not game players. Game players, you guys know all this stuff. As show watchers, this is like retroactively trying to show us why those other scenes are important. If you couldn't pick up the context clues, maybe it hits a little bit more. I want to put a pin in that just from like a show timeline standpoint, or like episode order standpoint. So Tom, I know we still have a pin in from like a Ted Lasso episode, but I would like to add this pin, and maybe by the end we'll talk about it. But
I'm going to put it on the wall right now?
Yeah, perfect.
Pin!
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Let's jump a year later. Oh, I do want to say that Ellie pays him a wonderful compliment. She says, "That didn't suck." Thank you, 15-year-old Ellie. I'm sure Joel wasn't destroyed by that criticism. Anyways, a year later, we're on a 16th birthday, because 15, then 16, Tom.
Math checks out.
They're on some sort of hike, and neither of them seem armed. And this immediately alarmed me. I was like, okay, is this a dream sequence? They should both have guns. I don't know where they're at.
Do you see Joel's arms? He's always armed, buddy.
Okay, he's like Henry Cavill in that Mission Impossible. He just, cocks his arms and he's ready to go. All right, that's fair. It just seems strange to me that we're just like hiking. Okay, cool. He does have this speech where he's like, listen, you don't want to go on patrol. Enjoy being a kid. I thought that was great parenting advice. He approaches like her about, I guess, Jesse and having a crush, and like we know that Ellie is not interested in Jesse. I'm sorry, not Jesse. Ellie does this thing once again, and maybe 16-year-olds do this. I don't know. I haven't had one. I was one once, but it was so long ago. But he's like kind of approaching a subject gently, and she just like hits him over the head with like the vulgarity of it all. Really more the scientific terms. I was like, I don't know. there are times I want to like Ellie, and then there are times I find Ellie obnoxious, and maybe that's what they're trying to do here. She's 15, she's 16. Those types of children are not often known for their tact or like navigating a conversation in a polite way. So I forgive them of all of this. I just found this like not endearing, but more grating. Once again,
See, to me, I like this. I felt like this was kind of more akin to like the season 1 style banter they had when they're just kind of romping across the U.S. and just kind of going back and forth.
fair.
When she said like the birds and the bees, she replaced it with the D's and the V's. Sure. Like I laughed out loud. I thought it was great.
Sure,
and even
fine.
like Joel's comment about like I've got a keen eye for these things, and she's like, no, you really don't. Not for this one.
You're missing this one. I just always appreciate the shock on Joel's face when she does things like these, because even though he spent this much time with her, he is jarred by it and like kind of taken aback. And so I think it's fair that I, as an audience member that only spends 40 minutes with him a week, am also jarred by it. But I get your point that it is a interesting back and forth that they've developed. This leads to dinosaurs, which, Tom, I got to be honest, this is the first time in the show they went somewhere that I found just completely unbelievable. We all know dinosaurs aren't real. We all know that people buried dinosaur bones in the ground to fake us all out. Yep. Arrested Development, you know what I'm talking about. Drink again. Have some squelch. Did you recently, I don't know if you've watched John Mulaney's show, but he did a dinosaur one. And I guess nowadays it's pretty common knowledge, or like that scientists are just like, oh, dinosaurs had feathers and were colorful. And like, it wasn't Jurassic Park. It was more like birds. See, this is why I don't think dinosaurs are real, because every 10 years we're going to change what they look like. Next thing you're going to tell me that T-Rex didn't have those tiny, adorable little arms, It
was like a velociraptor is like the size of a chicken. They're not like the huge, gigantic beasts that they are.
I refuse to believe it. Steven Spielberg would never lie to me, nor would Michael Crichton. Terrible. Terrible.
That's great. But like this whole sequence, I'll kind of say up here, like, there's a little bit more they do in terms of when they go into the museum. They kind of go through like a dinosaur exhibit, and watching some behind the scenes, I think they actually built the sets for it, but they didn't end up keeping it in the show. But like everything that goes on here with this museum piece, the dinosaurs, the space stuff, the capsule, this is all almost like shot for shot from the game. And it was so cool to see this so brilliantly recreated for the show. Cause like just like the angles of the shots, the way it was all crafted, it was just a carbon copy, and it was, I thought, so excellently done.
It was an interesting scene. Once again, I appreciate the bonding. This being the show that it is, they're unarmed, and I don't know that this place is safe or clear. I'm assuming Joel is a responsible parent, but maybe this is the ultimate lesson. He's like going to put her in the space capsule and be like, you have to survive on your own if you want to. And then he's going to make a bunch of noise. He's going to slam the hatch. He's going to be like, good luck getting back to Jackson. If you make it back, you can go on patrol. Like, I didn't know. I just felt on edge. And then eventually it warmed up to, okay, this is just all supposed to be heartfelt. They're in a safe place. Even though space isn't real, the Earth is flat and dinosaurs also aren't real. There is
tension there, as I say, there is tension when you're playing in the game, because like, yeah, you're not like fully armed, but you still have like your pistol and stuff, and as you're going through some of these like creepy sections, there's still tension that some zombies might pop out of you at some point.
Listen, and it didn't help that when he handed her the rock to break the glass, she made one of the creepiest faces in the world. She did that Ellie smile, and I was like, oh no, she's gonna murder Joel with that rock, which isn't possible because this is a flashback. But I appreciated like the loving gesture. I honestly, they should get Ellie to be in the sequel to First Man. Her and Ryan Gosling can be in space helmets, and this is very much shot like First Man, that like close up on the face and the music, the sound. So they did this in the game.
Yeah, so like it's like a very long extended sequence in the game that just really, I think, just brings so much of the emotional weight and story here, because this is, you would argue, probably one of the best moments that Joel and Ellie have had together, like at least one of their happiest. And even like Neil Druckmann, the creator of the game, he worked with Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie in the video game, and Troy Baker, who played Joel. He like asked them specifically, like, hey, what would you want to do if you're not doing acting or whatever you're doing? And Ashley Johnson's like, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go to space. So he specifically wrote Ellie wanting to go to space and being an astronaut. He asked Troy Baker, who played Joel, what would you want? He's like, I would want to be a singer. So like he took the actors that kind of portrayed and created these characters and made essentially the essence of them into the game. So I thought it was beautiful. And we've seen some little callbacks through the first couple episodes of this season of Ellie's kind of infatuation for space. And like, while it might seem kind of like childish and maybe she's a little bit too old for this, like she's grown up in a world that only sees this as like science fiction and not something that probably, people will ever do again, fly into space. So it is a beautiful moment in the games, and I thought they captured it here so beautifully.
Yeah, no, I did not think of it as a childish pursuit. I enjoy this part of like Ellie's backstory and that she enjoys it. And, as someone who believed in space up until several months ago, I would have enjoyed it too at any age, But now the curtain's been revealed, Tom, and I know that it's all just one big projection in the sky. You ever seen 3 Body Problems, Tom? We're all just bugs, We
are.
That show is weird. All right. Lovely moment. I don't know. Tom, as a young child was taught not to go hide in refrigerators, I don't know how much I'm giving credence to this like space capsule, and I don't know that I'm shutting that door all the way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I put my shoe in it or something.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely wedging a pinky or some sort of appendage in that. Appendix wouldn't work. Not that it's doing anything, but that would be major surgery. So I wouldn't do that, Tom. Anyways,
I wouldn't put it past you.
Beautiful moment. They're leaving. They're going back down the trail once again, unarmed, full of infected. And
infected investors. Yeah.
Yes, infected investors.
It's Wall Street ones.
He says, we should do this more often. She says, yes, maybe. She looks off to the side. She pauses. And Tom, I swear to you, it took me about 15 minutes to realize she was looking at fireflies. I did not catch that. I'm sure you did. I did not. I was just like, did she hit her head as she got out of the space capsule? What is happening? And then I kept thinking about it. And then, once the fireflies come up later in the episode. So, maybe I'm the issue. I don't know. Maybe this is on me. I won't take responsibility for it, but this might be my fault.
I thought it was a very clever like little tie-in because it does happen quick when they do cut to the fireflies kind of like lighting up as it's kind of dusk and they're heading back to Jackson. And again, it's interesting, right? Because this is essentially one of the happiest moments they've had together as kind of father-daughter, and there's still this lingering lie that she knows and is festering in the back of her mind. So when she sees the fireflies, it kind of causes her to take a beat and think about it again. Sure.
And to your point, this is like a continuation of the festering of a lie. And so I got it. Sorry, show. It just took me a bit. All right, we jump another year. It's our 17th birthday. We're coming home. What's that?
He upgrades the chocolate cake. Seth said it would be difficult, but now he did it for 2 years later.
Yep, comes home from work early. It's got the chocolate cake. Boom. He finds Ellie with the tattoo artist, and he is in the midst of a awakening of drugs and lovemaking and girls, and Joel is just so taken aback. Joel must have lived a pretty traditional life. He doesn't seem to be picking up on a lot of the clues, but
he's
no
an
judgment.
Old conservative Texas father here, not very accepting in this moment, but I love his line of like, really all the teenage stuff all at once. That was good.
That was good.
Did you notice like the tattoo artist here? This is Kat, who we saw in I think it was the first episode, who was kind of leading the patrol when they kind of went out and her and Dina went to like that grocery store or whatever. So this is actually a character we've seen, because I think even Dina kind of like pokes at Ellie a little bit by saying that she had hooked up with Kat.
Okay. No, I did not make that correlation. This all leads to an argument. We've got our first tattoo argument, and this is culminating in a mattress move, which, Tom, have you ever tried to move a large mattress alone?
It's not easy. I mean, but she had maybe a full, so I think you could move it by yourself. But
Well, she's a small individual, and I would argue even with two people, if the mattress isn't firm and it like starts to bend, I would have to say probably 70% of divorces happen because of like during the movement of a mattress, like during a move or a room change. I mean, my first 3 divorces all because of mattress movement.
Wait, I thought you were against divorce.
Well, Tom, yes, I am now that I found religion, but earlier in my life, I moved a lot of mattresses, not in the way that you think I mean, but...
I don't even know what you think I mean.
It caused a lot of divorces. Anyways, let's move this mattress on into a conversation where she wants to go to the garage. She really, there's a couple of times in this episode she lays into Joel, and I understand that there's like some festering resentment, but I don't know. Joel's, other than murdering those 20 people in that hospital, for the most part, he's a pretty nice guy. He's trying. He's doing his best.
He's doing his best. And again, like what he said at the beginning of the episode of like his father, like just try to do a little bit better than me. I like the way he kind of goes about this. Like, hey, don't do this right now. If you want to do this, you want to get your own space, that's fine. You know, let me fix it up for you. So I like that he doesn't just slam the door and run away. Like he stops, takes a breath, and talks to her.
Yeah, and there's a dialogue. And then he does a nice thing. He curiously asks about the tattoo. And I assumed this tattoo was of a firefly, but this is a moth tattoo?
Yeah, we'll kind of get to it here, and I think in a second. Well, it's the next scene, but like Joel's initial impression is he wants to think that it's, you know, symbolizes change and growth. But as in this next scene where he kind of goes and meets Gail, and the therapist, gets a little bit more kind of insight from her perspective. And I think the whole idea of the moth here and what Gail even says is like the moth is more of a symbol of death. And we know Ellie's always been kind of infatuated by death. But the concept of a fire or a moth kind of being drawn to the light and having a greater purpose, I thought is very interesting. So while it's not a firefly, I think there's certainly some correlations there.
Sure, and he brings up a butterfly because he wants this tattoo to be about growth and like change. And she's like, oh, well, if you're a kook and you study dreams, then the moth means death. And he takes this as gospel. Like, I don't know. He reacts to this as if he's been stricken by something. It could have just been a moth with no deeper meaning. I don't know. But I guess I see what the show is doing, but the way he reacts, I was just like, she literally just said, if you're a kook and you believe in these types of things, let's not buy it hook like a line and sinker. But
yeah, and Gail's fantastic in this scene too. Like, I just love her.
She's so mean.
Quick little bits. She's great. She's the best therapist.
I would argue Ellie should not spend much time with Gail because the meanness of Gail is rubbing off on the meanness of Ellie. And poor Joel's just getting harassed.
He's getting the brunt of it. Yeah. She is reading this book called Earth Abides, which, doing some research on this is kind of like a post-apocalyptic novel that I think Neil Druckmann, the writer-creator, is like a big fan of. And there's some like notes that are kind of tied in the game that you can kind of pick up that have some like direct correlations to some of the characters from the book. So just kind of wanted to call that out because I think it's a cool little mini Easter egg.
Interesting. I'm sure you paused the show and you read the whole book as she flipped through it.
Just the cover and the back cover, because that's all I could read on screen.
All right. Well, I didn't realize you were getting so lazy. That's fine. All right. Let's jump 2 years. It's the 19th birthday, and Ellie's in her room, and I thought this was interesting because we've all done this, where you're trying to work out a conversation, and she has smartly written it down. She's got all of her questions, and she's practicing asking Joel about Salt Lake City. And I will say that in my nigh 60 years of life, every time I have practiced a conversation, it has literally never gone how I planned it.
Of course.
And so these days, Tom, I go into every conversation with no preamble. Everything just, I go in like it's going to be an argument. It's just a full frontal attack the whole time, Tom.
Listen, if you listen to our podcast, people know that you don't come prepared.
That, man, and this is not how I saw this conversation going. Man, played this one out 1,000 times. Didn't think you were going to rip a hole in my soul. All right. So Ellie's present is she's going to go on her first patrol, and she's going with Joel. And we are then riding through the forest. Once again, Joel is trying to teach her how to like patrol and use binoculars. And Ellie is not being very receptive to the lessons. And this drove me crazy.
Listen,
like binoculars, Tom, you and I know how important binoculars are. All right. You got to practice with them too. You know?
I mean, to Ellie's defense, though, I mean, Joel was trying to teach her how to use binos on a moving horse, which seems very difficult, if not silly.
Tom, I've seen you use binos from a moving UTV. How is that any different? You know, you've done it. You're spotting dimes. You're spotting dime dates on the floor from across the room. You're spotting javelina, doing all kinds of things, you know?
Well, I feel like I was spotting like the side of a mountain. I feel like they're in a dense forest, where she just finds two squirrels making sweet squirrel love.
That was an interesting moment. All right. The tranquility of this patrol, which is supposed to be the safest patrol, just squirrels making love, is another patrol is under attack. And so they ride together. This moment where she, as someone who's very eager to take parental responsibility herself later on in the show, I found it interesting where she's like, Joel, I'm not your kid, I'm your partner. This felt like this was straight from like a 60s cop drama. She's like, I'm your partner. We go together.
I like this line, right? Because this is not just Joel taking her out for like a walk in the forest. Like this is an official act and officially going on patrol. So Joel just can't tell her to like go back to Jackson, because the idea of them patrolling together is that they have each other's back. And I think they even say so in the next scene as they get off their horses and they're kind of saying like, I've got your back, you've got mine. I liked it. And I like Ellie being more forceful with him here.
I appreciated that. I just didn't need the dig that I'm not your kid. That's what I didn't need the dig. I'm sure that probably stung. This whole time, Joel's like sneaking. He's probably muttering, I mean, I practically raised her, you know. I tried to take care of her. I got a chocolate cake on the last. I got a vanilla on the other one. She's only telling me he's not my kid. And he's
Covered
just
all my
muttering the
Lego.
whole time. Yeah. I spent all my Legos on her. I don't hit her. My dad hit me. His grandpa hit him, you know. I don't know. So that line hurt. All the other stuff, I appreciate her being like, hey, we're on patrol, and I'm a part of this. I enjoyed that. Didn't enjoy the rider being dragged by the horse.
No.
Felt bad for that person. And we end up finding Eugene. And this is the Eugene that was promised. This was the savior that was promised to us. I'm going to take that one again.
You should keep it.
No. This was the prophecy that was foretold to us, that a Eugene would appear and that Joel would unfortunately kill him because Gail's mad about him. So this was the guy that grows the weed, right? And is the war veteran and everything. We've heard of him. He's been foretold.
Yes, and as you said, it was Joe Pantaleone. Wait, no, I'm saying that wrong. Joe Pantoliano?
I just know him as Joey Pants. I don't know, man.
Joey Pants. He's unbelievable. I love him. And it's funny, too, because I was listening to the official pod, and they talked about there being a Matrix poster in Ellie's room at one point, and they had to actually, like, Photoshop out Joe Pantoliano's name from the poster because he's in that movie. And they didn't want to, like, break that fourth wall bit, which is very good.
He almost looked like David Cross, but then once he started talking, I was like, oh, that's Joey Pants. Like, very Memento, Matrix, all those things. He's great.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, hot fudge sundae y en la nueva creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Anyways, we found out he's got a little bit of a nibble taken out of his midsection. This leads to the conversation, and I thought this was very interesting. It's like Joel immediately recognizes him as a threat. He is, as someone who knows he's dying, wants to see Gail, his wife, one last time. And Ellie doesn't see an issue with taking him back, having him see his wife. He doesn't seem to be that infected. Granted, he will be eventually. And I thought this whole conversation, which you and I don't need to go into because by the time you saw the bite on my chest, you would have already shot me. You've been very clear about how quick you'd put me down.
Well, I mean, if it was on your arm, I'd shoot your arm off. If it was on your chest, then I'd have to shoot your chest off, and that's just not going to go well for anybody.
Dom, it's in my neck. Just shoot my neck off. I'll be fine. Man.
But I like the way Ellie, like it's a callback to season 1, right? Where she puts him through the same test that Marlene was putting her through of like count to 10, hold your arm out so it doesn't like shake or whatever. So I thought that was kind of clever and a brilliant idea. The other thing that's interesting too is like the only person really in danger here is Joel, right? Because Ellie is immune. So you don't have to worry about her getting bit or anything like that. So, I mean, I guess we could talk about it a little bit later, but I guess the question is, do you feel like Joel did the right thing here? Like Jackson has the rules that we shouldn't bring back infected. I mean, I think the biggest issue that this whole plays out in this whole scene is essentially his promise that he gives to Ellie, saying that I'm not going to do anything, and then he does it anyways.
So, there are protocols in place for a reason. A lot of times we don't want to abide by them. I've never had to shoot Joey Pants on the side of a lake, so I can't speak to this. But I did not fault Joel for this. I feel like you don't know when someone's going to turn. It can happen suddenly. And so I don't really like the argument that he's also the only one that is like in jeopardy here because she's immune. These infected are pretty violent. I mean, you can still get bitten enough to bleed out. So I understood what he did. I don't know that I agreed with his I promise. And
this is all used as like the catalyst, right? Of them, Ellie kind of seeing the promise and then seeing Joel essentially kind of renege on it and it being the big deal. And like, I love the scene too, like when he finally takes him to the lake, he takes him to get this one last beautiful scenery and let him soak it in. But his like line saying like, I don't want like to talk to Gail or necessarily like, I want her last words. It's not that he wants to say something to Gail. He just wants her to speak to him, which I thought was really powerful. And then Joel even kind of coming back and saying the lines like, listen, if you love someone, you can always see their face. And then lo and behold, sees her face, he's a goner.
Right. And we don't even see the shot. We just see the birds rise up from the trees. I thought that was well done. And of course, Ellie is upset. Doesn't like that he was not, as we say, a promise keeper. He was a promise breaker. And I don't know. I don't fault Joel for this. I fault the way that maybe it was communicated. But couldn't we have just said, hey, he immediately started to turn and I put him down? Like, there's ways to get around this, although you're just adding more lies to an already festering lie.
Well, and even the way they are like kind of dragging his body back, right? It's very reminiscent of Ellie and Jesse dragging Joel's body back.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll call back.
Yeah, and it's like the lie is being dragged with them. It's like it's following behind them. I will say that I did not appreciate what happens next, which is we have Gail come out to grieve the body, and Joel, I don't know. I don't fault him this. He tells her that Eugene was brave. He shot himself. He went out well. I agree that in this moment, that's not a bad lie. But Ellie diming him out in front of Gail, I felt was just, this doesn't do anyone any good in terms of it doesn't do Gail any good. It doesn't do Joel any good. What essentially is happening here is Ellie is letting a different lie affect her judgment in this moment. And it is more issues than it's really solving. So I had trouble with this one.
No, I think you're right? Because her concern right now is calling out Joel for his BS and not necessarily Gale. I mean, you can make an argument that Gale, like maybe she feels Gale deserves the truth here because she didn't get it. But I feel like the language here is incredibly important, right? Because when they're in the woods, Joel says, I promise, when he says he's not going to shoot him. But instead of her saying, like, you promised, she specifically uses the words, you swore. And when they were entering into Jackson and she asked him that pointed question, like, swear to me, this is how it went down. And he says, yes, I swear. So she's not calling him out on this lie. She's calling him out on the one, 4 years prior.
Sure.
So I thought it was very, very cleverly written.
Sure. And I think this is like well done from a human perspective. Like there's often things, I don't know if you're like this, Tom, but like say you go to a public place and people are doing something that are obnoxious and bothers you. If you don't go over there and say something to them immediately, like, hey, like we're here, you're loud, and this is a bad example. Say you're camping and someone's playing loud music at midnight. Yeah. The other thing you do is you sit there and you don't say anything, and it just like slowly builds and it slowly builds. And by the time you're so upset, you go over there and you like do or say something that a calm, rational person wouldn't do. I feel like this is something where Ellie has held on to this, and this is not her fault. Joel was the original one that swore and lied. I understand that. But like rather than having this conversation years earlier, it's just built up and built up and built up. And then it came out in like a high stress, like she sees him lying again. And so I thought that was an interesting way for them to do it. I just mainly felt bad for Gale because
exactly.
Now she hates Joel and knows that Eugene, got shot in the back while staring at a lake, which isn't a bad way to go, Tom.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Which is someone who visits lakes with you. I'm now a little bit nervous that I've said that. You're going to be like, he said this is how he wanted to go. And I'm like, I can hear you. And no, it's not. Anyways, let's finish this one up, Tom. Let's jump 9 months later we're going to get to the porch conversation, which I feel like all the gamers and all of the world has been waiting for. But they replay for us, Seth being a bigot at the dance, Joel coming to Ellie's aid by shoving the old barkeep down, her screaming at him, and this leading to him playing on the porch. And the show does a funny thing where she walks by, and the show's like, guess what, guys? They're not going to have a conversation. And then, Ellie comes through like a trap door in the floor, and she's like the Phantom of the Opera from backstage, and she's there, and they have their conversation.
Yeah, and this is... So I'll say here, there's essentially kind of a couple things going on here where a lot of flashbacks in the game, or at least two major ones, take place in this one scene. In the games, Ellie actually goes back to Salt Lake City and gets like hard proof from like a doctor's like notes or something like that shows and proves to her without a shadow of a doubt that Joel did all this horror. Where here she has to essentially get it out of him and have him kind of confess to it, which is kind of interesting. And then this conversation that they have about like the sacrifices that were made and the love and everything else. Like, again, timing wise, it takes a little bit different place in the game, but I think it makes sense here because for something to kind of pay off in a show versus a video game, a video game you're going to play through in a handful of hours, even though this is a very long game. The showrunners were smart enough to realize, like, we can't leave this kind of cliffhanger without doing some of these backstory bits when we know the season 3 or 4 is not going to come out years later. So I like that they kind of brought these really impactful and powerful scenes together here. Let's chat through it.
Sure. So we open up with some soft conversation. We talk about coffee. We talk about the kiss with Dina and, hey, she'd be lucky to have you. All of that, like, hey, soft roll into what we really want to talk about, the preamble.
And before you get to that bit, like, I do think it's interesting, right? Because we get another reference of coffee, and that's kind of, again, why Ellie places that coffee beans on Joel's grave previously.
Sure. Ellie calls him a naughty name, and she says to him, which is interesting because I think Naughty Dog created this show, so it's all a tie-in. She's like, you lied to me. You had that same look when you lied, or when you promised, when you lied about the fireflies. And she gives him like one last chance to come clean. this is very well acted by both of these. Both Pedro and Bella do a great job here. And so it's essentially like, hey, if you want to keep me, if you want this relationship to last, you got one chance. And so he owns up to it, and he admits, and she asks him like, hey, were there actually other people that were immune? Which I didn't know that was a lie he had told her until I think this episode. And so it's interesting to note that he added to the lie a little bit. And then I guess he must have blamed all the deaths on raiders. So there's no raiders, there's no other immune people. The thing I found interesting is she said, so they could have made a cure. And he not emphatically, but he unequivocally nods yes. And I don't think that's fair. I think in that moment you could say, I don't know, because he's not a scientist. There was one doctor and no one's cured this before. So I don't want to nitpick, but I did think the show was just like, hey, we'll have him admit to all of the grievances. And I didn't know why.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they're kind of just as a gameism or a showism, making it more matter of fact. Yes, if she would have sacrificed herself, then the world could have been cured. Because I think it's just more impactful for here. But it's science. You don't infer a disease that has never had a cure. So yeah, you don't know with any sort of certainty. But I don't think it changes any of the sentiment of him taking that choice away from her.
You don't think he could have hemmed and hawed and be like, listen, they might have come up with a cure, maybe, but half the people probably weren't going to take it. Half the people weren't going to wear masks. We know this from historical evidence. He does
go ahead. I was going to say too, though, but he also makes mention too that, and maybe you're about to mention this, but him taking out Marlene, which Ellie is the closest thing that she probably had to a mother figure. So now also knowing that not only did she take out all these doctors and potentially innocent people there, but also Marlene, that is brutal.
Sure. That's fair. He also mentions that, hey, the cure would have killed you. And I thought it was interesting, and from a place of strength, Ellie says, well, that would have been my purpose. And I think we see something scrawled in a notebook earlier. It's hey, find your purpose, or you were made for something greater, something along those lines. And so I think it's interesting that she is kind of read into this and understands that she could have given, her life in order to save people, and she would have made that choice to do it.
Exactly. And I think just given all the horror that they went through on their journey to get here and what we saw in season 1, she wanted it to mean something. And now not being able to have given that choice, I think is the hardest part here.
Yep. And he brings it back around to hey, I gotta be honest, I would do it all over again, because in his mind, she is his daughter and he is there to protect her. And she doesn't understand the love of a parent, but he ends it with, if you have one of your own, I hope you do better than me. And yeah, I thought this was all once again, they wrapped it back to that first scene of the episode.
Yeah, and her response too is calling him selfish, and he's like, no, I'm not selfish, I love you. Essentially him saying I'll pay the price for this. I know that you're going to potentially hate me for doing this, but you're going to be alive. And that's what a parent would do.
Sure. And there's an interesting, you look at it from the perspective of Joel, in order to save her, took lives. And then in her mind, she was willing to give hers in order to save strangers, possibly give the world a chance. And I think that is an interesting, we all kind of think, hey, Joel is a hero, and Ellie makes some questionable choices. But in a moment like this, if you evaluate their motivation, it's an interesting thought process. So I know that the porch scene was important for gamers and something that you had been looking for, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. This conversation. And again, it takes place a little bit different in the games. So maybe it hits a little bit different in the games, but I love that they did it here. And even her final line, I think, is one of the most impactful ones, where she's like, I don't think I can ever forgive you for this, but I'd like to try. And man, is that powerful, the idea of forgiveness. So to see her as a character in this moment start going down a path of forgiveness and trying to be better and trying to allow Joel to still be a part of her life. And then immediately the very next day, Joel gets ripped away from her and she completely abandons any sort of path of forgiveness. And it's all justice and vengeance. It's horrifying.
Sure. And we end the episode with a cut back to her in the rain, going back to the theater, which I'm assuming we will find Jesse, Tommy, and Dina waiting prior to the season finale. And so what I do want to talk through is, you had mentioned kind of this porch scene happens in a different order. And I would like to talk through, I'm going to pull the pin I put in the map earlier, Tom.
There you go. All right, let me pull it out.
Yep.
Unpin. Okay, go ahead.
Good. Oh, my eye. And so I just want to say this. So there have been some emotional stakes that this game or this show has pushed for in the last couple episodes that all hinge on this porch conversation, that these two were no longer like in a falling out, but were in a reconciliation. And I would almost argue from like, and I'm not a showrunner, this is just kind of a, hey, let's talk through it, is if they would have put this episode after the episode where Joel died. So if you would have done this as the third episode, you would have been reeling from his death. You would have gotten all this flashback, and you would have then gotten to the point where, hey, they had just reconciled. Like, I feel like the weight of his death would have added to this scene, and then also played to those those other two episodes where she's kind of on a warpath. You can also see she's struggling with like the guitar scenes and what those mean, and what was taken from her. I just think it's weird that, once again, like the retroactive of, hey, those scenes, once again, this is for show watchers, not game players. Those guitar things, those moments where she like looks off and is in pain, I think they mean more if you'd seen this episode. Does that make sense?
No, I couldn't agree more, because we've talked about it, but I think when they do those scenes like of her singing the guitar, I feel like they're just in reverse order, right? Like, what is supposed to be impactful is taking place in this episode as opposed to in the previous ones, but you needed this groundwork to be able to have that earlier stuff pay off. So I'm kind of with you. I think I'm sure the showrunners went back and forth of like when to kind of splice in these different flashbacks, because it is different in the game, and they have like more time to be able to draw out when they want to like do these little pieces. Because the same thing with like Ellie and Joel going to the museum and doing that like space thing and the Apollo 15 lander, or not lander, but capsule. Like that kind of took place after a pivotal moment in the game as well. And it's like, well, what time do you bring that stuff in?
Right.
And I think it's obviously to say so in retrospect, but I'm kind of with you. I think if maybe it's not the very next episode after Joel dies, because maybe they want to like let her breathe with the pain a little bit, as opposed to immediately going back and showcasing the backstory. But I think I'm with you. I think it would have been better a little earlier.
Sure. You could argue that you could almost bring this episode before the episode of Joel's death. Like, that would almost work, because you roll from this, they've just reconciled, and you're like, great, we're going to be okay. And then the next episode, you take him. Like, I mean, that's like Red Wedding level. People are heartbroken. So once again, not a complete criticism. Doesn't ruin the show for me. I think there's some stuff that would have had a bigger impact had they done this in a different arrangement. But still enjoying the show for the most part. I have my qualms. Once again, space isn't real. Dinosaurs had feathers, but that's not what we're here for, Tom. So anything else you want to kind of roll up regarding the game or the show before we go into the finale? And I'm assuming the finale can only be kind of a cliffhanger leading into the next season, because unless it's an episode of them killing all of the WLF and all of the Sarah Gyms? No, Sarah Gym is the massage table my parents own. The Seraphites. There it is. Which would be a long episode. I think we're going to be waiting for the conclusion of this story for a couple of years.
Yeah, and we know there's a third season. There's talk of potentially being a fourth, like maybe they would get through the whole story in 4. I don't like the pacing that they've done here. I feel like it would maybe make sense to get it in 3, but I don't know. Because this has been a tighter season, right? We're only getting 7 episodes here, but like I said, man, I still love this episode. As somebody that just recently replayed through the second game, I actually just finished it over the weekend. I think, and I'm glad I did, because I think some of these scenes hit a little bit harder knowing the totality of the story and like all the different kind of beats. I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say like we're going to explore more of the Seraphites and the WLF and Abby's character to kind of like round that out a little bit, and probably will do so in season 3. But I thought it was a good, solid setup for the cliffhanger. And again, even as somebody that's played the game, like I'm still interested to see where they're going to end this for the season. Because I think there's a couple different spots that are very impactful in the game that they can kind of go down. But I'm still kind of guessing where we'll be. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sure. And this was the penultimate episode. So we're going into the finale. And I just want to point out, Tom, that even though you played the game recently, you know, you don't have a monopoly on the emotional impact this show has, just because I recently played a level of Star Fox 64 with my son, and when Peppy died because I shot him down purposely, even though he's on my team, I also felt his death and therefore related it to this show because video game characters die if you kill them on purpose, even though they're on your team. So I'm interested in where the finale is going to go for this show. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you if you have nice things to say. If you have mean things to say, just store them in your heart and let them fester and turn you into a bad person. You can rate and review us at Apple Podcast or on Spotify. If you haven't, please do. It does help out. And Tom, what did I forget?
Yeah, just kind of emphasize what Julian said. Like, yeah, we are a very small podcast, so if you can just go on, if you're enjoying our shenanigans, if you can go on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review, we greatly, greatly appreciate it. But yeah, follow us on the socials at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast, on Threads, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Dasher,
Jupiter,
on Blue Sky.
Yep,
all of those. But yeah, let us know what you think of the show. Again, whether you played the games or you did not. I would love to be able to get people's reactions and kind of how this hit them from both sides of the aisle. Because I think it's like there's a lot of fair criticism I think you can have on this show. And for the people that have played the game, maybe you want it to be identical to the game, but I think the showrunners have done a fantastic job adapting it, and I'm still having a great time.
Yeah. And those of you that didn't watch the show or play the game, but have only read some erotic fanfic about it, we'd like to hear from you as well. So,
please.
For Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Till next week, everybody.